Dealing with an anthrax outbreak, training information for ENR staff and contractors. This DVD is designed to help staff and contractors responsible for dealing with an anthrax outbreak to understand anthrax and the Government of the Northwest Territories' response to anthrax outbreaks. The 9 chapters in this DVD cover the following topics: overview of anthrax, surveillance techniques, protective clothing and equipment, getting to the site of an outbreak, field sampling and testing for anthrax, assembling an anthrax response team, disposal of carcasses and site decontamination, reporting requirements, and follow-up requirements. This DVD is intended to summarize the Anthrax Emergency Response Plan. Please refer to the latest AERP for updates, clarifications, and additional information. Chapter 1: Overview of Anthrax. Anthrax is an infectious disease caused by a bacteria called Bacillus anthracis. The disease occurs worldwide in a wide variety of grazing animals. In North America, anthrax cases tend to be seen in cattle, sheep, and bison. In domestic animals, there are effective disease management practices available to prevent or control anthrax outbreaks. In free-ranging wildlife, there are also ways to try to reduce the current and future impact of anthrax on wildlife populations. Anthrax outbreaks in the Northwest Territories usually affect free-ranging bison. A few cases have also been seen in moose, but only during large bison outbreaks. Anthrax outbreaks can result in the death of a significant number of bison, which can be an important factor in the management and conservation of this threatened species. No one is sure how or when anthrax was introduced into the northern bison populations. The first outbreak was documented in 1962, but historical reports of bison mortalities suggest it may have been in the area earlier. Once introduced into an area, anthrax spores can remain viable in the soil for many years. The spores may remain dormant until certain environmental and climatic conditions trigger an outbreak. Wet springs followed by hot, dry summers may increase chances of an anthrax outbreak through the concentration of anthrax spores in low-lying areas. Bison may contract the disease by inhaling contaminated soil during vigorous wallowing in dust baths in these areas, or by ingesting contaminated soil when they are eating. Large mature bulls seem to be more susceptible than other age classes and usually make up the majority of cases in an outbreak. 19 anthrax outbreaks have been recorded in northern Canada between 1962 and 2012. 16 in the Slave River lowlands and Wood Buffalo National Park populations, and 3 in Mackenzie bison population. A bison infected with anthrax will appear depressed or indifferent to people. It could have a frothy discharge from the nostrils and swellings in various parts of the body. The animal will also have difficulty walking and may appear to stagger or walk with a stiff-legged gait. Infected bison usually die within 72 hours. They are unable to travel very far from the area which they were infected. Fresh carcasses are often found on their side in a sawhorse position and are very bloated. People can contract anthrax if they have direct contact with the infected animals or carcasses, or with equipment that has been in direct contact with carcasses. Anthrax can cause skin, respiratory, or intestinal infections for people. Skin infections are the most common form seen in people of North America. Dark pustules form on the skin in areas where the skin has been compromised, such as scrapes or cuts. Anthrax infections can be controlled if treated quickly with commonly available antibiotics. Anyone who believes they have been exposed to anthrax should contact a medical professional immediately. For the general public, the risk of exposure to anthrax is minimal. Hunters, and especially anthrax response personnel, need to pay extra attention due to potential contact with the infected carcass. Anthrax response team members are both trained and have required protective clothing and equipment to dispose of infected carcasses. pre-exposure vaccination against anthrax is available for response team members. Antibiotics are also available for people who suspect they have been exposed to the bacteria. Again, anyone who believes they have been exposed to anthrax should contact a medical professional immediately. Chapter 2: Surveillance Techniques. It is very hard to predict an anthrax outbreak. Research is still being done to determine the environmental conditions that trigger an outbreak. The best approach is to monitor bison habitat and changes in weather patterns that may lead to an anthrax outbreak, such as high water, heavy rainfall or flooding, followed by hot, dry weather and intensive grazing by animals. Routine surveillance flights over bison ranges should be done every 2 weeks from mid-June to late August. Surveillance can be performed during ongoing wildlife research or forest fire activity flights. This will minimize costs. The Territorial Fire Center should be advised of high-risk areas so the fire patrol crews can check for dead animals. Routine surveillance should be increased if the conditions seem favorable for an outbreak. Use a fixed-wing aircraft such as C-185 or 206 with long range, low speed, and good visibility. Flight routes and surveillance forms should be prepared before the flight. Take a GPS unit with tracking capability on each flight so the route flown can be mapped precisely and logged. If carcasses are found, surveillance should be increased. In the case of an outbreak, more intensive surveillance should be done every second or third day by helicopter. The helicopter should be equipped with a GPS so the coordinates of every carcass found can be recorded. A surveillance flight schedule should be developed and approved by the regional superintendent. Flight routes and surveillance forms should be prepared before the flight. 1 or 2 observers should be assigned to each flight to watch for any dead bison or animals that are having trouble walking or appear sick. Flights should be conducted over large, open areas, low marshy areas and water edges, and major bison concentrations within the normal bison range. Flights should emphasize but not be restricted to areas of previous outbreaks. Surveillance flights should be conducted at an altitude of 800 to 1200 feet above ground level and a maximum airspeed of about 140 knots. Always maintain radio contact with base during the surveillance flight as outlined in the ENR Aircrew Briefing Manual. Observers should note any bison, moose, wolves, or bear seen during the flight on the anthrax surveillance form. A GPS location should be recorded on the form if any suspected anthrax carcasses are located. Download GPS data from the aircraft after each flight to a mapping program such as Aussie Explorer and add to the anthrax surveillance report. A copy of the report should be sent to the bison ecologist in Fort Smith for archival purposes. Detecting carcasses is difficult. If an outbreak has been confirmed, a helicopter-mounted thermal imaging or infrared system should be used to locate carcasses. A remote gimbaled system like Inframetrics Mark II with front and rear seat video monitors linked to the imaging system allows for multiple observers. The helicopter should have a flagging system and a 4-way intercom system. Pre-outbreak surveillance should typically be conducted on a Monday or Tuesday to allow time to collect and ship samples to the designated diagnostic lab if carcasses are found. Infrared surveillance is effective when the ground, rocks, and trees show an even, relatively cool infrared temperature. On hot sunny days, these conditions generally occur early in the morning, from first light until shortly after sunrise, and for a shorter time late in the evening. Cloud cover may extend the period suitable for infrared imaging. Experience has shown early morning is the best time to use infrared imaging to locate bison carcasses. Digital photographs taken from the air of each carcass location should be encoded with the date, time, a sequential carcass number, GPS coordinate, and location description. These photographs will help disposal crews relocate the site. The infrared crew must get a visual confirmation of suspected carcasses and a GPS coordinate from directly overhead of the carcass before leaving the site. Chapter 3: Protective Clothing and Equipment. People can contract anthrax if they have direct contact with infected animals or carcasses. Risk of exposure to the general public is minimal. Anthrax response personnel need to pay extra attention due to potential contact with the infected carcass. People involved in carcass disposal operations need to be adequately protected from exposure to infectious materials and anthrax spores. Anyone handling bulk formaldehyde during carcass disposal must wear protective clothing and equipment. This includes a heavy-duty rain suit or disposable biohazard suit, rubber gloves, rubber boots, and a full face mask. Anyone directly working with anthrax carcasses within the dirty zone as part of the testing, carcass disposal, and decontamination crew must wear protective clothing and equipment. This includes a Tyvek suit, rubber and/or latex gloves, rubber boots, and an N95 mask.
Okay, so now the don't ever take your face mask off thing. Yeah, don't do this. You know, you could do this if you have to. If you really have to, you know this is not dirty, then do something like that. If there's a bug biting you really bad or it's killing you. Okay, so now when you take your gloves off, slowly take one side off. Take the other side off slowly, both sides. Slowly work both. And then you got both inside, huh? Then you chuck that away. And these are kind of clean now. They're still clean. You haven't contaminated your other glove, huh? Okay, I'll show you the don't. Okay, so finished working on the animal. Take one glove off. Don't do this. That's no good. Okay? Now this is all dirty. Okay? So that.
Personnel working with the carcass sampling and disposal team but working in the clean zone away from the carcass must wear protective clothing and equipment. This includes rubber boots and washable coveralls. Disposable protective clothing must be burned after sampling or treating each carcass. Disposal crews must take every precaution to avoid spreading infectious materials on contaminated boots, clothing, and equipment, including helicopters. Woodcutting crews are trained forest firefighters or initial attack crews. Woodcutting crews will work in remote areas away from any direct contact with anthrax carcasses. All crew members must be certified in chainsaw safety. Crew members must wear the required safety equipment including Nomex uniform pants and shirts, steel-toed boots, hard hats, gloves, eye and ear protection when using chainsaws. Protective clothing and equipment should be kept in stock for immediate response to an anthrax outbreak. Additional supplies can be purchased if required as the outbreak progresses. Disposal crew members and other personnel who may be directly exposed to anthrax can be put on protective oral antibiotics. Vaccinations can be arranged for personnel involved in sampling or cleanup operations if a prolonged outbreak is anticipated or if they will be working in the area over a long period of time. This requires a series of shots over time. The Department of Health and Social Services administers vaccinations and antibiotics. Containers holding formaldehyde must be clearly marked with a poison or toxic substance symbol and WHMIS label. Drinking water containers should be clearly labeled and must not be used for toxic or noxious substances. A lot of equipment is required for the detection and disposal of carcasses during large outbreaks. The next section highlights equipment required for the various stages of an anthrax response. A two-person crew applies formaldehyde to carcasses and the surrounding area with back sprayers. The crew will need the following equipment: latex gloves, 4 pairs of Treadles rubber boots with disposable Tyvek boot covers, 4 pairs of woolen socks, 6 pairs heavy-duty rubber gloves, Tyvek coveralls with integral hood, 3 canister-style masks and filters appropriate for use with formaldehyde and new filters for each carcass. Masks can be full-faced or half-faced with safety goggles. Masks may be negative pressure or positive pressure with belt battery-powered fan. Package of plastic garbage bags, a bottle of bleach, a hand pump pressurized garden sprayer with 10% bleach solution, long-handled scrub brush, bottle of alcohol-based hand sanitizer, 2 rolls of 2-inch masking tape, 2 rolls of duct tape, 2 hand pump backpack garden sprayers, 20-liter capacity, 3 containers of water, 25 liters each, 4 containers of formalin, 3.75 liters each, 2 cans bug repellent, 2 radios for communications between crew and with transport, 2 gallons of clean drinking water and powdered Gatorade clearly marked, 1 man-day of food rations kit, and 2 bear deterrents. In very large outbreaks, a helicopter sling basket can be used for the initial treatment of carcasses. The supplies needed in this case includes a 100-gallon foam bucket with injection sac and remote-controlled pump, a 100-foot-long line, a heavy-duty rain suit, a pair of rubber boots, a pair of heavy-duty rubber gloves, a full-face gas mask or canister-style respirator, eye wash pre-filled with water, a portable shower bag with a minimum 5-gallon capacity pre-filled with water, package of plastic garbage bags to bag unwashed clothing, 45-gallon drum of concentrated formaldehyde, 10 gallons per carcass, hand wobble pump for pumping formaldehyde, 5 gallons of drinking water and Gatorade, can of bug repellent, radios required for communications between crew and with transport. A disposal crew is generally 3 or 4 members. The crew needs this equipment: 1 axe, 1 hand crank winch or come along with land anchor, 20 liters of diesel or turbo fuel per car.